Hello, my dear friend, and welcome. Settle in, get comfortable, and let the day's worries gently drift away. Welcome to Sleepy Time Stories, a cozy little corner of the world created just for you. This is a safe space, a sanctuary where you can quiet your mind, relax your body, and prepare for a night of deep, restful sleep. Let's begin. The Amazon rainforest. For centuries, it has been the world's greatest enigma. A vast, emerald sea of life, teeming with wonders and dangers that defy imagination. I'd spent my life dreaming of its secrets, reading accounts from legendary explorers like Percy Fawcett and Theodore Roosevelt. And finally, there I was, deep within its heart, miles from any semblance of civilization. The air was thick and humid, a cocktail of damp earth, blooming flowers, and something ancient, something wild. For a week, I'd been trekking, guided only by my compass and a well-worn map. My goal was a remote, uncharted waterfowl rumored to exist in a hidden valley. The days were a grueling symphony of hacking through dense undergrowth, the constant buzz of insects a permanent soundtrack. At night, I'd string up my hammock between two massive kapok trees, exhausted but exhilarated. The jungle at night was a different beast altogether. The familiar daytime sounds gave way to a chorus of clicks, croaks, and rustles. It was a world alive, and I was just a guest. On the 8th night, something changed. The usual symphony of the jungle was quieter. An unsettling silence had fallen, the kind that precedes a storm. I lay in my hammock, the fine mesh of the mosquito net, the only thing separating me from the darkness. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was just fatigue, playing tricks on my mind. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to listen to my own breathing. That's when I heard it, a soft, deliberate crunch of leaves on the forest floor. It wasn't the light scuttling of a small rodent, or the clumsy stumble of a tapir. This was different. It was heavy, but stealthy. Crunch, ... Pause. Crunch, ... Pause. The sound was methodical, circling my small campsite just beyond the reach of my headlamp's beam. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against the jungle's eerie silence. I fumbled for my high-powered flashlight, my hands slick with sweat. I switched it on, its powerful beam slicing through the oppressive dark. I swept the light across the wall of vegetation, a dizzying array of massive leaves, tangled vines, and gnarled roots. Nothing. I held my breath, listening. The crunching stopped. Had I imagined it? Was it just a jaguar? Curious, but moving on. Jaguars are famously elusive. They hunt with stealth, but rarely target humans in hammocks. I tried to rationalize, to calm the primal fear coiling in my gut. Then, a new sound, a low, guttural exhalation, like air being forced from massive lungs. It was close, frighteningly close. It wasn't a growl or a roar. It was a breath, a presence. I swung the flashlight back to where the sound came from. Again, nothing but the impenetrable wall of green. But this time I noticed something else. The insects, the frogs, everything had gone completely silent. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath with me. Whatever was out there, it commanded a terrifying respect. I stayed frozen, my light fixed on the jungle. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. My arm ached from holding the flashlight, but I didn't dare lower it. The silence was more terrifying than the sound had been. It was a loaded silence, full of unspoken threat. Then I heard a sound that chilled me to the bone. A low, raspy scraping against bark. It was the sound of something large dragging itself up a tree. I frantically scanned the canopy, my light dancing through the leaves. My camp was strung between two colossal trees. Was it climbing one of them? My blood ran cold. I was suspended 10 feet in the air. If something was in the tree above me, I was utterly defenseless, a piece of fruit waiting to be plucked. The scraping sound was slow, deliberate, powerful. I could hear the bark splintering under immense pressure, I imagined giant claws digging into the wood, hauling a massive, unseen body upwards. What kind of animal climbs like that? A black caiman? No, they stay near water. A giant anaconda? Possibly, but the sound was too sharp, too forceful for a snake. My mind raced through every known Amazonian creature. Nothing fit. The stories the local tribes told, dismissing them as folklore, now screamed in my head. Tales of the Mapinguari, the giant, one-eyed sloth-like monster with a mouth in its stomach. Legends of a shadowy beast that stalks the deep jungle. At that moment, lying in my hammock, I was ready to believe all of them. Suddenly, a foul stench filled the air, a putrid, suffocating odor of rot and musk, so thick I could almost taste it. It was overwhelming, an ancient smell of decay and raw, animal power. It was coming from above. I didn't dare look up. My fear was so absolute, so paralyzing, that I felt if I saw what was making that sound, my heart would simply stop. I just lay there, a statue of terror, pointing my flashlight at a random patch of leaves, pretending I was looking somewhere else. I could feel a presence directly over my hammock. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it anymore. But he felt Italiano, a heavy, oppressive weight in the air, a subtle shift in the darkness above. The hammock trembled slightly, not from the wind, but as if something immense had settled on a branch just feet above me, causing the entire tree to shudder. I clamped my mouth shut to stifle a scream. Tears of pure terror streamed down my face. I was certain these were my last moments. I was going to be another mystery of the Amazon, another explorer who went in and never came out. I don't know how long I lay there, trapped in that state of catatonic fear. It could have been 10 minutes or 3 hours. Time had lost all meaning. All I knew was the stench, the silence, and the crushing weight of the unknown thing above me. I began to pray, a desperate, silent plea to any god that would listen. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it started to recede. The scraping sound returned, this time moving away, descending the other side of the tree. The sound was just as slow, just as deliberate. It reached the ground with a soft thud that vibrated through the trees and up into my hammock. I heard the crunching of leaves again, heavy and methodical, moving away from my camp, deeper into the jungle's embrace. I stayed completely still, listening until the sound faded into nothing. The foul stench lingered for a while longer before the humid jungle air finally washed it away. Slowly, tentatively, the familiar night sounds returned. A lone frog croaked, then another, joined by the chirping of crickets. The symphony of life was resuming, as if a terrible conductor had finally lowered his baton. I did not sleep for the rest of the night. I remained awake, flashlight in hand, until the first gray light of dawn filtered through the canopy, chasing the shadows away. As soon as it was bright enough to see, I packed my camp with a speed I didn't know I possessed. I didn't even make coffee. I just had to get out. I abandoned my quest for the waterfall. It didn't matter anymore. On my way out, I passed the tree I'd been tied to. My eyes were drawn to the bark. Starting from about 15 feet up, there were deep, vertical gouges in the trunk, a foot long and inches deep. They weren't made by a jaguar. They were too wide, too crude. It looked like someone had taken a pickaxe to the tree, and at the base of the tree, I found a single, massive footprint in a patch of soft mud. It was indistinct, but it was huge, easily twice the size of my own boot, and it was shaped like nothing I'd ever seen. I never found out what was stalking me that night. I've told my story to cryptozoologists, to seasoned explorers, and to indigenous guides. Some nod knowingly and speak of ancient legends. Others try to explain it away as a known animal behaving unusually, but I know what I felt. I know the sounds I heard and the terror I experienced. The Amazon keeps its secrets well. I was lucky enough to get a glimpse of one of its darkest, and even luckier to have lived to tell the tale. It as a reminder that there are still places in this world where we are not at the top of the food chain, places where mystery and fear reign supreme. Thank you so much for joining me on this terrifying journey back into the Amazon.
The Amazon. They call it the lungs of our planet, a world teeming with life, much of it still a mystery to us. 5 years ago, I was part of a team of 5 researchers eager to peel back another layer of that mystery. We were botanists, biologists, and one very brave photographer, venturing deep into a section of the rainforest that was barely mapped. Our mission? To document a newly discovered species of orchid rumored to have incredible medicinal properties. The first few weeks were a dream. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. The sounds were a constant symphony, the chatter of monkeys, the piercing calls of macaws, and the low hum of a billion insects. We were making incredible progress, collecting samples, taking photos, and feeling like modern-day explorers on the cusp of a major breakthrough. We felt invincible, surrounded by nature's majesty. But the Amazon has a way of reminding you just how small you really are. It happened on day 17. A sudden, violent storm rolled in. Not just rain, but a torrential downpour that turned the world into a churning, brown torrent. The small creek near our camp swelled into a raging river in minutes, washing away our supplies, our satellite phone, and most critically, our trail markers. When the water finally receded, we were adrift in a sea of green. The familiar paths were gone, erased. We were lost. Panic is a cold, creeping thing. It started in the pit of my stomach. We had our compass, but in a jungle this dense, a compass only tells you which way is north. It doesn't show you the impassable ravines or the impenetrable thickets that lie in that direction. Our leader, a seasoned biologist named Dr. Aris Thorne, kept a level head. He gathered us, his face grim but determined. "We're not panicking," he said, his voice steady. "We know the main river is roughly 20 miles east. That's our lifeline. We walk east." So we walked. The dream had become a nightmare. The beautiful symphony of the jungle now sounded menacing. Every rustle in the undergrowth made our hearts leap. The humidity was suffocating. Our clothes were perpetually damp, and the insects were relentless. Our food rations dwindled at an alarming rate. We started foraging, using our collective knowledge to identify edible plants, but it was meager sustenance. The jungle that had seemed so giving was now withholding everything. Days blurred into a monotonous cycle of waking, walking, and collapsing in exhaustion. We were getting weaker. It was our youngest member, Ben, the photographer, who was hit the hardest. He was tough, but the combination of malnutrition, dehydration, and a nasty infection on his leg was taking its toll. We did our best to care for him, but without proper medicine, we were fighting a losing battle. After a week of grueling trekking, we stumbled upon a wider tributary. This was our chance. Aris made the call. We would stop walking and start building. We'd make a raft. It was a monumental task for 5 exhausted people. We spent 3 days using our machetes and knives to fell balsa wood trees, their lightweight wood our only hope. We lashed the logs together with every vine and cord we could find. It was a crude, clumsy-looking vessel, but to us, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. It was hope. We gently loaded Ben onto the center of the raft. He was barely conscious, his fever raging. The rest of us took our positions, pushing off from the bank and into the slow-moving current. For the first time in days, we weren't fighting the jungle. We were moving with it. The current was our engine, carrying us towards the main river, towards rescue. But the Amazon is as cruel as it is beautiful. The tributary wasn't a calm highway. We navigated around submerged logs and sudden, shallow sandbars. On the second day on the raft, Ben's breathing became shallow. We all knew what was happening. We gathered around him, holding his hand, whispering words of encouragement, but we were helpless. As the sun set, painting the sky in fiery colors that felt like a cruel joke, Ben took his last breath. There are no words to describe the silence that followed. There were 4 of us on that raft, surrounded by the cacophony of the jungle, but all I could hear was a profound, crushing emptiness. We had lost one of our own. We performed a simple ceremony, our grief as vast and deep as the river we were on. We promised we would tell his story, that his courage would not be forgotten. Losing Ben changed something in us. Our desperation was replaced by a grim, unbreakable resolve. We weren't just surviving for ourselves anymore. We were surviving for him. We had to get his story and our own back to the world. We pushed on, our hands raw from paddling, our bodies aching, but our spirits bound together by loss and determination. 2 days later, the tributary opened up, and we saw it, the wide, majestic expanse of the main Amazon River. It was like seeing the ocean for the first time. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming. We weren't safe yet, but we were on the right path. We steered our raft into the main current, and not an hour later we heard it. A low, mechanical hum in the distance. It grew louder and louder until a small fishing boat came into view around a bend. I'll never forget the feeling of seeing those two fishermen, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. We screamed, we waved, we cried. We had made it. We were saved. They pulled us from the water, 4 skeletal, sunburnt survivors, babbling our story in a rush of relief and exhaustion. The journey back to civilization was a blur. Hospitals, debriefings, the tearful calls home. But even now, 5 years later, a part of me is still on that raft. The story we brought back wasn't just about a new species of orchid. It was a story of hubris, of survival, and of the profound, humbling power of nature. It was the story of 5 people who went into the jungle, and the 4 who came back, forever changed by the green heart of the world and the friend we left behind. The Amazon gives, and it takes. It teaches you lessons you never thought you needed to learn. It showed us the fragility of our own lives and the incredible strength of the human will to survive. And it's a lesson I carry with me every single day. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It's important to me that Ben's memory and the lessons we learned are not forgotten. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more true stories of adventure and survival. Stay safe and always respect the wild.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to sleep in the heart of the Amazon rainforest? I'm not talking about a cozy lodge with mosquito nets and air conditioning. I mean really sleep there under the stars with nothing but a hammock and a thin blanket between you and the wild. I did it once, and let me tell you, it was one of the most terrifying yet profound nights of my entire life. It all started with an ambitious trek deep into the jungle. My guide, a man named Marco who had lived in the Amazon his whole life, thought it would be a great, authentic experience. As the sun began to dip below the colossal canopy, the forest transformed. The familiar greens and browns melted into deep, inky blacks, and the air, once thick with humidity, grew heavy with an electric tension. Marco helped me string my hammock between 2 massive ironwood trees. He gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "The forest sings at night," he said with a smile. "Just listen." He then retreated to his own hammock about 50 feet away, and soon his soft snores mixed with the burgeoning symphony of the jungle. I was alone, or rather I was anything but. The rhythmic chirping of crickets, the deep croak of a distant tree frog, the gentle rustle of leaves in the faint breeze. It was like a lullaby composed by nature itself. I closed my eyes, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I was a guest in the world's greatest cathedral, a living, breathing testament to life's raw power. But as the night deepened, the choir changed its tune. The lullaby became a cacophony. Sudden, sharp crack of a branch nearby made my eyes fly open. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was it a jaguar? A tapir? Just a falling branch? My city-dweller mind, unaccustomed to this level of sensory input, went into overdrive. Every rustle was a predator stalking me. Every hoot was a warning. Then I heard it. A low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the very wood of the trees my hammock was tied to. It wasn't loud, but it was close. So close I could almost feel the breath of whatever made it. I froze. Every muscle in my body tensed. My breathing hitched in my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut, as if not seeing it would make me invisible. It felt like an eternity past, listening to the frantic thumping of my own heart. The growl came again, a little further away this time. I didn't dare move. Sleep was now a forgotten luxury. My new mission was simply to survive until dawn. I lay there, hyper-aware of everything. I could hear things moving in the undergrowth just below my hammock. Small, scurrying sounds, the delicate snap of twigs under tiny feet. I pictured armies of spiders, scorpions, and centipedes marching just inches from my back. Something brushed against the bottom of my hammock, and I nearly screamed. Kicking my leg out instinctively. Silence. Then the scurrying continued. Above me, the night sky was occasionally visible through breaks in the canopy, a dizzying spray of stars so bright they seemed unreal. But my focus was downward, on the darkness below. A pair of glowing eyes suddenly blinked open in the shadows, reflecting my feeble headlamp beam. They stared at me, unblinking, before disappearing as silently as they appeared. An ocelot, perhaps? Or something else? The not knowing was the worst part. Sometime after midnight, the howler monkeys started. It's a sound you can't possibly prepare for. It's not a howl. It's a demonic roar that rips through the silence, a guttural, terrifying sound that seems to come from the depths of the earth. The first one erupted so close it felt like it was right above my head. The whole troop joined in, their roars echoing through the trees, a primal chorus of dominance and warning. It was a clear message. This is our home, and you are an intruder. The sheer, overwhelming power of the nature around me was humbling. It didn't care about my plans, my fears, or my existence. It just was. As the hours crawled by, a strange thing happened. The fear didn't completely disappear, but it began to share space with a sense of awe. I was witnessing the raw, unfiltered engine of life. The sounds were no longer just threats. They were conversations. The growl was a declaration of territory. The scurrying was the nightly search for food. The howls were a family, checking in on each other. I was an eavesdropper on the planet's oldest and most intricate society. I realized my fear came from a place of disconnect. We live in sanitized boxes, so insulated from the natural world that we've forgotten we're a part of it. We've forgotten the language of the wild. That night, lying in my hammock, I wasn't just hearing it. I was feeling it in my bones. When the first hint of gray light finally filtered through the canopy, it was like a divine reprieve. The nocturnal orchestra began to quiet down, replaced by the chirps and songs of the morning birds. The oppressive darkness lifted, revealing the familiar greens and browns once more. I had made it. I slowly, stiffly, climbed out of my hammock. My body was exhausted, but my mind was buzzing. Marco was already up, tending to a small fire. He looked at me and grinned. "Did the forest sing for you?" he asked. I just nodded, unable to articulate the roller coaster of emotions. It wasn't a song, it was an opera. It's a terrifying, beautiful, chaotic opera. I never really slept that night, not in the traditional sense. But I woke up more than I ever had before. God. That night taught me a lesson about fear, respect, and my own tiny place in this vast, wild world. It's an experience I wouldn't trade for anything, but I'm not sure I'm brave enough to do it again. Thanks so much for listening to my story.
The Amazon, a name that conjures images of impenetrable green, the symphony of unseen creatures, and a sense of raw, untamed nature. For years, I'd dreamed of it, poring over maps and documentaries, imagining myself as a modern-day explorer. Last year, I finally made that dream a reality. I went there not for fame or fortune, but for the pure, unadulterated thrill of adventure, to truly disconnect and test my limits. Little did I know, my limits were about to be tested in a way I could never have imagined. I'd been trekking for 3 days, deep into a section of the rainforest rarely visited by tourists. My local guide, a wise weathered man named Mateo, had parted ways with me at a prearranged point, promising to meet me at the river bend in a week. "The jungle watches," he'd said, his eyes serious. "Respect it, and it will respect you." I'd smiled, confident in my skills, my GPS, and my supplies. The first few days were pure magic. The air was thick and humid, tasting of damp earth and blooming flowers. Monkeys chattered in the canopy, their dark forms flitting between giant leaves. I saw iridescent blue morpha butterflies the size of my hand, and tiny poison dart frogs that were living jewels of red and blue. I felt alive, connected to the world in a primal way. I was exactly where I was meant to be. It started on the 4th day. It was subtle at first, a feeling more than anything concrete. You know that sensation when you're being watched? The hairs on your neck stand up, and you get a prickly feeling down your spine. I'd stop, scanning the dense undergrowth, but see nothing. Just the endless green, the shifting shadows. I dismissed it as paranoia. I was alone, miles from civilization. Of course, my mind was playing tricks on me, but then, the sounds began. At night, huddled in my hammock, I'd hear it. A low guttural sound that wasn't a jaguar's cough or a howler monkey's roar. It was a deep, resonant rumble, a vibration I felt in my chest. It always seemed to come from just beyond the edge of my campfire's light. Each time I'd snatch my headlamp, its beam would cut through the darkness. But there was never anything there. Just the impenetrable wall of vegetation. During the day, I started finding signs. A branch, thicker than my arm, snapped cleanly in a way that no normal animal would. A set of tracks, partially obscured in the damp soil. They were huge, larger than any jungle cat, and had a strange, almost humanoid shape, but with massive claws. I'm no expert tracker, but I know what a tapir print looks like, and this wasn't it. This was something else. Something big. My confidence began to evaporate, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. The feeling of being watched was no longer a trick of the mind. It was a constant, oppressive presence. I felt like prey. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I stopped taking photos. I stopped enjoying the beauty around me. My entire focus narrowed to one thing: survival. I decided to change my route, to push harder and faster towards the river, hoping to throw whatever was following me off my trail. I abandoned my leisurely pace, forcing my way through thick vines and thorny bushes, my arms and face getting scratched and torn. But it didn't work. The sounds at night got closer. The tracks became more frequent and fresher. Sometimes I'd look back and see the canopy swaying, as if something massive had just passed through, shadowing my every move. One afternoon, I stumbled into a small clearing. The air was heavy and still, and then I saw it, a crude shelter woven from branches and giant leaves. It was recently made, and beside it, a pile of bones, mostly animal bones, capybara, monkey butt. They were all split open, as if to get to the marrow. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just some unknown animal. This was intelligent. Whatever was tracking me, it was smart. Panic finally took over. I wasn't an explorer anymore. I was being hunted. I dropped my pack, keeping only my machete, a water bottle, and my GPS. I ran. I didn't care about the thorns ripping at my clothes or the vines tripping me up. I just ran, fueled by pure terror. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the jungle. The sound was immense, a force of nature in itself. It wasn't running, it was just moving, and it was faster than me. I burst out of the trees and onto a muddy riverbank. I was still a few miles from my rendezvous point, but I didn't care. I saw a half-rotten log jam downstream and knew it was my only chance. Without hesitating, I plunged into the brown, murky water. The current was strong, pulling me under. I fought my way to the surface, gasping for air, and swam for the logs. As I clambered onto the slippery wood, I dared to look back. For a split second, I saw it. At the edge of the jungle, partially obscured by the shadows, stood a figure. It was massive, at least 8 feet tall, covered in dark, matted fur. It stood on 2 legs, its long arms hanging at its sides. But it was the eyes that I'll never forget. They were large, and they glowed with a faint, reddish light, like 2 dying embers in the gloom. They weren't the eyes of a beast. They were intelligent, and they were watching me. It let out a deafening roar, a sound of pure rage and frustration that echoed across the water. It didn't follow me and just stood there, watching as the current carried my log raft downstream. I didn't take my eyes off it until the river bend hid it from view. I floated for hours, shivering, in shock, but alive. Eventually, I saw the familiar shape of Mateo's boat. The relief that washed over me was so overwhelming I nearly collapsed. He pulled me from the water, his face a mixture of concern and a strange, knowing sadness. I tried to explain what I saw, my voice trembling. He just nodded slowly, placing a blanket over my shoulders. He didn't call me crazy. He just said, "There are things in the jungle, older than any map. The Mapinguari, the old ones call it, the jungle's guardian. You are lucky it let you go." I don't know what I saw that day. A local legend, an undiscovered primate, or just a product of my terrified imagination. All I know is that the Amazon is more than just a place on a map. It's a living, breathing entity, with secrets we can't possibly comprehend. I went there seeking adventure, and I found it. But I also found a profound respect, and a healthy dose of fear, for the world's last great wilderness. That experience changed me. It taught me that we are not the masters of this planet, merely visitors, and sometimes, we wander into places where we are not welcome. Thanks so much for watching and sharing this story with me.
The Amazon, a world teeming with life, mystery, and a darkness that can swallow you whole. I learned that the hard way. My name is Julian, and I went looking for adventure. What I found was a fight for my own survival. It started with a simple mistake, a wrong turn off a barely there trail. I was a researcher studying rare species of frogs, and my passion had made me careless. One minute I was marveling at the emerald canopy. The next, the jungle had closed in around me, silent and menacing. The familiar sounds of my expedition team were gone, replaced by an unnerving quiet. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at my skin. For 3 days I wandered. The humidity was a physical weight pressing down on me, and my supplies dwindled at an alarming rate. The jungle, once a place of wonder, became a green labyrinth designed to break me. Thirst was a constant torment, and hunger gnawed at my stomach. I was weak, disoriented, and on the verge of giving up. On the 4th day, as dusk painted the sky in shades of purple and orange, they found me. They moved like shadows emerging from the dense undergrowth without a sound. Their bodies were covered in intricate patterns of mud and ash. Their faces were masks of stoic curiosity. They carried spears tipped with obsidian and blowguns crafted from river reeds. I didn't even have the strength to run. They surrounded me, their eyes dark and unreadable. I expected the worst, but their touch was surprisingly gentle as they helped me to my feet. They led me through winding, invisible paths to their village, a collection of huts woven from palm fronds, nestled in a hidden clearing. It was a world untouched by time. They gave me water from a hollowed-out gourd and a strange, starchy fruit that tasted like salvation. For days I was a curiosity, a ghost from another world. The children would stare at me with wide, wondrous eyes, while the elders watched with a cautious distance. They weren't cruel. They fed me, they gave me a hammock to sleep in, and they tended to my cuts and scrapes with herbal pastes that smelled of earth and rain. But I was still a prisoner. I couldn't leave. A quiet but firm guard was always nearby. The language barrier was a chasm between us. I tried to communicate with gestures to explain that I was lost, that I meant no harm. But my pleas were met with blank stares. I learned their rhythms, the way they hunted with silent precision, the way they chanted to the moon, the way they lived in perfect harmony with the forest that had almost killed me. Part of me was in awe of their existence. Another part, the part that missed the sun on my face, and the sound of my family's voices, was screaming for freedom. The shaman, an old woman with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of 1,000 years, was the one who held my fate. She would often sit before me, studying me, her gaze piercing right through my soul. I felt like she was weighing me, judging my spirit. Was I a threat? A bad omen? I didn't know, and the uncertainty was a torture worse than any physical restraint. My chance came during a storm. Not just any storm, but a true Amazonian tempest. The sky turned black, and rain fell in solid sheets, turning the village paths into muddy rivers. Thunder cracked like the sky was breaking apart, and lightning illuminated the jungle in terrifying, split-second flashes. The chaos was my cover. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat of fear and hope. While the tribe secured their huts against the deluge, I slipped away from my hammock. The guard who usually watched me was busy helping to tie down a flapping roof. It was now or never. I ran. I ran with a desperation I had never known, fueled by adrenaline and the primal need to survive. The jungle floor was a treacherous soup of mud and roots. Thorny vines ripped at my clothes and skin, but I didn't feel the pain. The roar of the storm was my shield, masking the sound of my frantic escape. I didn't know where I was going. I just followed the slope of the land, hoping it would lead me to a river. A river was a lifeline, a map drawn by nature itself. After what felt like an eternity of stumbling through the darkness, I heard it, the powerful rush of moving water. The river was a raging brown torrent swollen by the rain, carrying logs and debris like toys. It was madness to enter, but it was my only way out. I found a large fallen log near the bank, and with the last of my strength, I pushed it into the current and clung to it for dear life. The river carried me away, tossing me on its violent waves. I was swept downstream, away from the hidden village, away from my captors, away from the life that was almost mine. For 2 more days I drifted, clinging to that log, semi-conscious, delirious from exhaustion and hunger. Then, a miracle. The sound of a motor. At first I thought I was hallucinating, but it grew louder, more distinct. I used the last ounce of my will to cry out. A weak, pathetic croak. A small fishing boat navigated by two local men appeared around a bend. The look of shock on their faces is something I'll never forget. They pulled me from the water, a skeletal, wild-eyed man babbling about a lost tribe and a desperate escape. They saved my life. They brought me back to civilization, back to a world I thought I'd never see again. I never told the authorities the exact location of the village. How could I? They weren't monsters. They were a people living outside of our world, a secret the jungle had kept for centuries. They had captured me, yes, but in their own way, they had also kept me alive. My story isn't just about escape. It's about the profound, humbling, and terrifying mysteries that still exist in the deepest corners of our world. The Amazon gave me a story to tell, but it took a piece of my soul in return. Thanks for watching my story unfold. It's a reminder that our world is bigger and more mysterious than we can imagine. If you found this journey as captivating as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales from the edge of the map. Stay curious and stay safe out there.